Hello, parents. Welcome to Unmuted Love. I'm your host, Eshelman, and today I want to paint a picture for you of the child in the room who's not the one who, by default, gets the most attention, right? So picture this, maybe like something that happens in your own home. Maybe there's a child 8 years old or 12 years old sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, or maybe even doing a puzzle. And they're in the living room when the storm breaks out. And when the storm's over, when all is finished and said and done, when you finally surface, kind of exhausted or frayed or running on fumes, that same kid says to your silent, inquisitive, "Hey, are you all right, buddy?" And what you get back is a kind of, "Yeah, I'm okay, Mom." That "I'm okay, Mom" is not the absence of a problem. Sometimes it's the biggest thing in the house needing your attention. Previously, I interviewed Shannon Shedley, Executive Director of Siblings Australia, about the impact on siblings of living with high needs children. It was an enlightening conversation that made me realize I wanted to say even more specifically about how to address some of this with you. So today we're talking about the kid who isn't in crisis per se, the one who learned to read the weather in the room before they entered it. And we're going to talk about it honestly. So I know you have worry, guilt, fears. Then I'm going to, suggest a few simple things that actually might help, because there is help to be had for the siblings in families with children from difficult beginnings. If you're new to this podcast, this is a space for parents of kids from difficult beginnings of adoption, foster care, and early adversity, the whole shebang really, to listen and learn without shame or blame. I focus on relationship over consequences and love over fear. Today's episode is one a lot of parents over the years have asked me about in my Love Plus therapeutic parenting program. They say some version of, "Hey, I've learned a lot about how to show up for my kids who's struggling. But what about the other one? The one who's watching all of this? Are they getting harmed? The one who keeps telling me they're okay, but it doesn't seem like they really probably are. I mean, how could they be?" When I talk about siblings, I'm talking about something I've watched up close in family after family in my office, and something the research has a lot to say about. It's not a tiny formula I'm going to offer you here, because every single family is different. Every house is its own ecosystem, and you know yours better than I will ever. So take what fits and leave what doesn't, and trust your gut. I trust you know. What I can offer is a way of seeing the sibling experience that takes it seriously without drowning you in one more thing to feel guilty about. Because even the dog knows you've got enough of that already. I'm not adding to the guilt pile today. Hopefully I can take a few things off of it. I think parents tend to think of the sibling as maybe more like the audience, right? The one watching, the one on the sidelines while the main event happens, the easier kid, the one who, is fine. But siblings aren't spectators. Their nervous systems are in the room, and a developing nervous system living next to unpredictability does what every nervous system does. It starts organizing itself around the thing it can't predict. It learns the cues. It learns the warning signs. It learns to brace for the impact. It becomes hypervigilant. Researchers who study this, and there's a real body of evidence now, are clear that siblings of kids with significant behavioral or developmental needs are at higher risk for their own emotional and behavioral struggles than other kids. They're not destined for it, so don't think that, but they are at higher risk for it, and that risk goes up the more intense the situation at home gets. The flip side, which I will not let you forget today, is that the supports that buffer them are real, knowable, and accessible. So I'll get there in a minute. There's a name that's been getting tossed around lately for the sibling in this spot. It's called the glass child. And I had actually not read that before until I started looking into the research on siblings. And before you picture something crystal and fragile, here's what it actually comes from. It's the idea that when a parent's attention is consumed by a child with intense needs, the other child can become someone the parent's eyes pass straight through, like glass. Not because anyone loves them less, but because love and attention are not the same things. And one of them, attention, is painfully finite in a high needs home. Folks, if this is happening in your house, skip the guilt spiral, please, and aim for useful insight. The question is whether the kid who's quietly doing fine is getting enough of your actual eyes-on attention. And in most of our houses, on most of our days, the honest answer is, well, less than we wish. Naming it is the only way we can start to change it. So let's name it if it's happening at your house right now. So let's go inside the sibling's inner world, because if we can see it, we can meet it. I want to walk through a handful of the things that tend to live in there, and I bet you'll recognize at least one. Your struggling kid throws something, breaks it, melts down, and you, wisely, don't address it in the white heat of the moment. Yay, you know that regulation is what's important. You wait, you circle back when everyone's regulated because you know nothing good gets installed in a brain that's flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. So that's smart parenting, trauma-informed parenting. That's love plus parenting, as I would call it. But from across the room, the sibling sees something different. They see, hey, he broke it and nothing happened. That's not fair. If I did that, I'd be in so much trouble. He does it and gets a hug. To a developing brain, that's not a nuance. That's a double standard. And it's genuinely confusing, even for adults, let alone an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old. Siblings often carry feelings that seem to contradict each other all at once. I love my brother, and I can't stand him at the same time. I'd defend her to anyone at school, and I'm also a little scared of her at home. I feel sorry for him, and I'm furious that he wrecked another birthday party. And then comes the second wave, the meaner one, guilt about the first wave. Siblings have guilt over feeling the hate. They have guilt for being the one who's okay when their sibling is so clearly not. Kids don't have the scaffolding yet to hold two true things at once. So the contradiction just rattles around inside them and comes out sideways sometimes, like a lot of stomach aches, or a meltdown over nothing, or a sudden harshness at their sibling. The feelings aren't the problem. The not giving themselves permission to have the feelings is the problem. This other version really breaks my heart. A lot of siblings make a quiet, early decision. I'm not going to add to my parents' problems. They see the plate you have. They've been studying that plate their whole lives, and they decide quietly, with a generosity no kid should really have, to be no trouble at all. They get the good grades. They keep the worries to themselves. They become astonishingly self-sufficient. And from the outside, it seems like resilience. Look how well adjusted. Look how independent. But underneath, it can be a child who's learned that their needs are a luxury that their family can't afford. Now, that's a heavy thing to install in a person at age 9, 10, 11, 12, and it tends to show up later in perfectionism, people-pleasing, and trouble setting boundaries. Researchers track this right into adulthood, so we know it's a real thing and it really does happen. A close cousin to that is parentification. That's the clinical word for when a kid steps into a parent-sized role, thinking they are managing the household emotional temperature, thinking they have to soothe the parent, mediating between their sibling and their parent, or anticipating what might go wrong, or controlling the environment so the next blow-up doesn't happen. They get praised for being mature and responsible and a very good little helper. Truthfully, some responsibility builds genuine capability, right? I'm not anti-chore. I'm not anti-responsibility. But there's a line, and the research is pretty sober about it. When a child is carrying adult-sized emotional loads, when they feel responsible for your well-being or your safety, that's not character building. That's a weight that bends them. You can see this show up as bossiness, hyper-control, and an inability to just, be a kid. This part is super important. When a sibling's behavior is frightening, unpredictable, aggressive, when there's genuine fear in the home, the other kids can be traumatized by that. Not stressed, traumatized in the real sense. Their home becomes unsafe for them. That isn't how it's supposed to be, right? Your home is supposed to be your safe haven. It can look like hypervigilance, a kid who's always scanning the room, always one ear on the hallway. It can look like anxiety, irritability, withdrawal, a flatness that wasn't there before. If that's happening in your house, see if you can hold both of these things at once. 1, this is serious and it deserves real support. Sometimes it needs even professional support. And 2, you are not helpless here. And we're about to talk about exactly why. Okay, big inhale with me. One more time, that was a lot. If your chest got tight during that last stretch, that makes sense to me. You love these kids fiercely, and the stakes are really high. Everything I just described, every single bit of it has counterbalance. The research on kids who go through hard things is wildly, stubbornly hopeful on one point in particular, and we're about to build the whole next part of this episode on it. So shake your hands out and let's move from the storm to what we do about the aftermath. Before I give you the reframe, I want to read you a few of the messages that prompted this episode. I've, cut out a lot of the details and the personalization, so you won't be able to tell who it is, even if you happen to think you know. Because I think hearing them out loud does something that my explaining can't really do. It tells you you're not the only one, for one thing. One parent wrote me more or less this: my daughter is 11 and she's the easiest kid on the planet. Straight A's, never a problem. And last week she told me completely calmly that she doesn't tell me when she feels bad because I already have enough to deal with. I haven't stopped thinking about that since. Here's another one. I overheard my son tell his friend that he can't have friends over because he never knows what his brother's going to do. He said it like it was just a fact of life, and I realized he's been managing that embarrassment alone for years. And one more. I'll be honest, I read this 3 times, and it went like this. I think my older kids are a little bit afraid in their own home, and the thing that guts me is they still hug their sister often. How is a teen both scared of someone and be that loyal to them at the same time? That last one, that's the whole point of this episode, really. Scared and loyal at the same time. Furious and protective at the same time. That's not confusion to be corrected. That's the shape of love in a dysregulated family. And our job as parents isn't to resolve it for them. It's to help them figure out how to carry it the best way they can without being invisible or paying too high a price. In other words, helping them stop being a glass child. So here's an important notion. The way you treat your fragile nervous system child teaches your other children how to treat them too. The sibling experience tends to mirror the parent experience. Your kids are watching your face when the upsets happen. They're noticing your posture toward their sibling, not what you say, but how you show up. And they will, as best they can, follow you there too. They'll show up that way too in the future. So if your stance is fundamentally, your brother's behavior is a symptom of a nervous system that's on overdrive to survive, it's not him choosing to ruin our lives. Your other kids learn to see him that way too. Not perfectly, not all the time, not without internal argument, but they will over time. And that single shift can change the entire emotional climate of the house. Now, this is super crucial. A compassionate lens is not the same as being a doormat. I want you to really hear that. I'm going to say it again. A compassionate lens is not the same as being a doormat. Seeing the behavior as a symptom does not mean we protect it and pretend it didn't happen or that it didn't hurt. It sounds like this. You might say to your sibling kid, your brother's brain got overwhelmed and he couldn't handle his big feelings. And it's completely unfair that he wrecked your project, and you have every right to be furious about it. Both things are true. Every time, the compassion does not cancel the validation, and the validation doesn't cancel the compassion. You're teaching the sibling to hold 2 true things at once. Officially, that's called holding a dialectic. Your model will help them learn how to hold a dialectic too. 2 things can be true at once. If you only do the compassion, be nice, he can't help it. Your sibling kid learns their pain doesn't count. If you only do the consequence, he's bad, he's in trouble. You teach a worldview that's blaming the brain of the harmed child. I'm going to go very concrete on you here. I'm going to give you a handful of habits you can start with. Actually, start with just one. Like I often say, slow is fast here. One little change makes a lot of difference. When your sibling kid comes to you with, it's not fair, our reflex, especially when we're running on empty, is to leap straight to the coping skill. I know, buddy, but that's just how it is. You've got to let it roll off. We might tend to skip the part where we actually agree with them. So slow down and lead with the agreement. You're right. It is unfair. It is genuinely unfair that you have to deal with this, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. That's how you don't fix the unfairness in order to validate it. In fact, you usually can't fix it. And trying to skip past it just teaches your kid that their feelings are an inconvenience. Validation isn't agreement that the world should bend to them. It's you saying, I'm in this feeling with you for a second before we figure out what's next. That with you is the healing part. Give your whole family vocabulary for what's happening that isn't good kid, bad kid language. Whatever metaphor works in your house. So, for example, a brain that's in survival mode versus settled mode, or an alarm system that's set too high, or a sensitive nervous system, or a guard dog that barks at everything. Pick one and use it for everybody, including you, especially you. Oh, my alarm just went off. Did you hear that? My alarm just went off. I need a minute to get back to center. When you say or narrate your own dysregulation in the same language, you do 2 things. You de-shame the whole concept, and you show your sibling kid that this isn't a special filter we only use for the, quote, problem child, unquote. It's how this family understands being human. Okay, here's something that's actually really important to think about. If you only extend this behavior as a symptom, let's get curious, grace to your struggling child, then your other kids are completely right to call it unfair. Because, well, it is unfair, folks. You've created a two-tier system. One kid gets understood, everyone else gets consequenced. So widen a little bit. When the sibling melts down, give them the same curiosity. When the kid down the street is being a little terror, you wonder out loud, what might be going on for him? While also fully backing your kid's right to not want to play with him. When someone's behaving badly on a show or in the news, you run it through the same lens at the dinner table. The compassion has to be a house value applied to all people, or it reads to your other kids as a special exemption for the one who breaks things. Make it the air everyone is living in and breathing. Here's a place the research and plain common sense show up together. One of the simplest, most protective things you can do for a sibling is small, regular, predictable one-on-one time. Not a trip to Disneyland, more like a walk after dinner. Something so reliable they can set their internal clock by it. Why does something so small matter so much? Because the glass child, remember, is the feeling that my parents' eyes pass through me. And the antidote to that is not grand gestures, not big things. It's frequent, dependable proof that your eyes land on them, on purpose, when nothing's on fire. Protect that time like it's a work appointment you can't miss, because honestly, it's more important. By the way, this has to be dedicated time that isn't earned by being good and isn't canceled by their siblings' crisis. Otherwise, you've just taught them that their slice of you is the first thing that gets scrubbed. Now, if you've got a little adult on your hands, the parentified kid, your job is to gently, explicitly fire them from the job they never should have been hired for. Out loud, say this: it's not your job to keep your sister happy. It's not your job to keep me okay. That's grown-up work, and I've got it. Your job is to be you. Kid, you may have to say it a lot because they've been on this job a long time and the habit is deep. And you may have to back it up by actually being the regulated adult in the room often enough that they start to believe you can handle it. But that sentence, your job is to be a kid, is one of the most freeing things a parentified child can hear. So here's my big finish. Ready? When researchers study why some kids who go through genuinely hard childhoods come out the other side okay, and many, many do, the single most consistent finding across study after study is almost embarrassingly simple. It's relationship. That seems like a duh, doesn't it? Duh. At least one steady, safe, caring adult who is reliably in that child's corner matters most. That's it. That's the headline of decades of resilience research. One dependable, attuned relationship can buffer a child against the effects of real adversity. And it doesn't have to be you carrying that whole load by yourself. In fact, the data is even kinder than that. Having a couple of caring non-parent adults in the mix is its own protective factor. A grandparent, a coach, an aunt, a teacher who gets it, a neighbor who keeps showing up. That was true for me. Mrs. McDonald across the street was my one adult. I'll never forget her or be able to repay her for her love of this latchkey kid she befriended for no apparent reason to me. But she did, and it probably saved my heart. So for your sibling kid, you're doing two things. You're being one of those steady relationships yourself. That's the one-on-one time, the validation, all of it. And you're widening the circle on purpose so they have other adults who see them. And you know what? Peer support matters pretty enormously for older kids too. There are sibling support programs built for exactly this, designed so a kid can finally be in a room full of other kids who are there just to be kids. If something like that exists near you, it's worth the time to try and find it. I do have one last thought about this for today. The sibling age matters. For the little ones, toddlers and preschoolers, you'd be amazed how much they can hold if you keep it simple and concrete. You're not explaining nervous systems to them. It's too much. You're saying things like, sometimes your brother's feelings get so big they spill out like water in a too full bucket. And that's scary, isn't it? You're safe. I've got you. That's all you need to say. Small kids mostly need to know two things. This isn't their fault, and a grown-up is in charge of the safety. That's it. And say it often. For school-age kids, roughly 6 to 11 years, the fairness radar is fully online, and this is where the it's not fair conversations live. This is your validate first age. They can also start to genuinely understand the idea that different people have different sensitivities, that some brains have a louder alarm system, as long as you keep it non-shaming and apply it to everyone, not just the siblings who struggle. This is the golden window for installing the concept of two different things can be true at the same time. You notice I've said that several times. It's because holding a dialectic turns out to be one of the major best skills for maintaining relationships across your lifespan. For teenagers, okay, teens often swing between fierce protectiveness of their sibling and white-hot resentment, sometimes in the same hour. They're also the ones most likely to have quietly parented in the background for years and most likely to be planning their exit fast, college, moving out, getting away. With a complicated cocktail of anger, relief, and guilt about leaving, they exit your house. With teens, the goal is respect and honesty. Don't manage them. Level with them. This has asked a lot of you, honey, more than it should have. I see that, and I don't expect you to feel just one way about your sister. This is where you can give them permission to have a life that's theirs. And if they'll go, try to get them to a peer support group. Other teens who live this life are the best medicine for them. It's gold for that age, especially because the last thing a teenager wants is to feel like a freak. The relief of Me Too is enormous. They often won't go though, so don't make them. As if you could, right? I'm slightly averse to shamey, don't do this list. So take this as, let's see, a warm caution from someone who's watched them backfire, not directives from me because they might not work. Try not to be the easy one, the family religion. When we constantly praise a kid for being no trouble, we accidentally tell them that being trouble, having needs, having a bad day would cost them our approval. Praise who they are, not how little they require from us. Try not to explain away their pain with the brain first model. It might sound something like, he can't help it. It's true. And it's also not a complete sentence when your other kid is hurt. The brain first model explains the behavior. It doesn't erase the impact. Both clauses, remember, need to be there. And trying not to wait for them to fall apart before you check in, that's important. The whole trap of the glass child is that they don't make much noise. If your system for noticing a kid is wait until they're in crisis, the quiet one will slip through every single time, and they'll fall through the cracks. So instead, go to them first. Don't wait to be summoned because they've decided never to summon you, right? They don't want to summon you in a healthy way. Now, they might summon you in a non-healthy way by acting out or getting loud over nothing or suddenly becoming a problem child, but that's what you're trying to avoid by assisting them first. Okay, theory's really nice, but let's put it in your house. Here's a scene a lot of you might recognize. Your younger one has a massive meltdown and snaps the head off your older kid's favorite figure, the one they saved up for, the one that mattered to them. The older kid is devastated and screaming, "He always does this and never, ever does anything happen to him. I hate him. It's not fair." The younger one is already spiraling more, right? The dysregulation is showing up bigger and bigger. So here's the dance. First, safety and regulation for whoever's most flooded. It could be you, so regulate first. Usually the kid who broke it, they need regulation because they're heading into a shame spiral that'll make everything worse. Once you get that child settled in, no lecture, of course, just regulation, you're not rewarding him. You're putting out the fire so everyone in the house can think again. Then, and this is the part we often skip, you turn fully toward your older kid and you lead with the agreement, not the management, just the agreement. You know what, honey, you're right. It's not fair. You worked hard for that and he wrecked it. And you have every reason to be furious. I'd be furious too. And then, folks, you just let that be the whole thing. You don't rush to, but he can't help it, or you just stand with them in the unfairness because that's where the connection gets built. No, you just stand there in holding these two things at the same time. Later, when everyone's settled, comes the holding, right? And the repair, where you might say something like, "Here's what was happening for your brother. His alarm went off and his thinking brain went offline. And that's a real thing his brain does. And that does not make it okay that your figure got broken. And we're going to figure this out and he will make it right with you." Then your older kid gets to feel their pain be taken seriously and see that the lens you use isn't a get out of everything free card. Notice what that sequence does. The struggling kid gets regulation, not shame. The sibling gets validation and sees real accountability. And the family value is we understand behavior and we still make things right. That gets reinforced for everyone watching. That's the whole darn manual in a breath. Of course, nothing goes that smoothly. You'll not do it that cleanly most days. Do it cleanly when you can. It matters. I can't close without naming the thread that runs under all of this, which is the real grief. Your sibling kid is grieving. Even if they're not using that word, they're grieving the brother or sister they may or may not have wanted, the ordinary childhood they imagined happening in other families, the birthday that didn't get ruined, the version of home where they could just hang without drama. Grief isn't just for parents. The ache for what was wished for to be and isn't happens in children too. Kids feel that ache without having any idea what to call it. I know you're grieving too. The family you pictured, the enjoyment of family life you wanted, the image of yourself as the parent who's fun and lighthearted, that grief is real and it's righteous, and it doesn't make you ungrateful or unloving. It makes you a person who hoped. You can't guide your kid through a grief you won't let yourself feel. So this is your homework from me for whatever it's worth. Let yourself have it as the natural cost of loving people in a difficult season. Childhood. Tend to your grief and you'll have so much more room to tend to theirs. If today felt heavy in spots, I get it. I named some real and very painful stuff. But here's where the hope lies, folks. The dialectic of both things can be true at once concept gives compassion for the struggling one and full permission for the sibling's real feelings. That is what helps. Small, dependable time together is more protective than any grand gesture, and the most powerful thing in the entire science of resilience is also the most doable. One steady, caring adult, ideally a few, you can be one, and you can recruit the others. That's what they need in order to thrive. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening today. I feel like I've just given you a big old lecture. I didn't really mean to be doing that, but I feel kind of emphatic about this. I think this is really important to know. If you know a parent who might benefit from this, please pass it along. Supported parents create a healthier world, don't you think? Okay, everybody, I'll see you in the next episode of Unmuted Love.